Today, I'm going to be talking about payment processing and Visa, which dominates the payment processing market. So, Suresh, have you ever thought about what happens when you tap your card or your phone to pay for something that you've bought?
I've tried to think about what happens, but I've never got my head around it because it's such a massive system around the world, and I kind of just have no clue what actually happens.
Yeah, it's really complicated actually, and it's something that we take for granted these days. But to understand how Visa came to be, we need to go back to the 1950s. Companies started allowing customers to use cards to buy things on credit. So what would happen is you would be issued an airline card or a card from a department store, and you could buy things with a credit line such that you could buy things with the money you didn't already have. And this was wildly popular and boosted customer loyalty among merchants. Now the problem is, you could only use, say, your airline card to purchase airline tickets and spend money at airlines, and you could only use your department store card at department stores. You couldn't use one card for everything. But this guy called Joseph Williams, who was at Bank of America at the time, and Bank of America had a big California operation, decided that he would try and start a general purpose card.
With only one credit card, the Bank Americard, you can charge almost anything, almost anywhere. The Bank Americard gives you instant credit from Boston to Honolulu, from London to Bangkok. The Bank Americard will soon be coming to Southern Ohio.
So Joseph Williams started what was called Bank Americard in 1958. And he tried to solve this chicken and egg problem where if you had no vendors accepting the card, customers wouldn't be willing to use this card. But on the other hand, if no customers were using the card, then no vendors would then accept it. So you sort of had this very unfortunate situation. And in order to solve this, they actually sent unsolicited credit cards to 65,000 people in a place called Fresno in California. And the reason they chose this place was because they had a 45% market share, and they were obviously very dominant in California, so they could negotiate with lots of the merchants so that they would accept the card that they just sent to 65,000 people unsolicited. And they had a credit limit of between $300 and $500. So you could essentially spend between $300 and $500 on any merchant that would accept the card, and you didn't have to pay it back immediately. You had a 30-day grace period, and they pioneered the interest rate model that credit cards use today, such that you don't have to pay off your credit card after every month. You could instead keep a balance, and that would obviously accumulate interest. But if you didn't have enough cash on hand, you didn't have to pay off your credit card.
I sure like the convenience of my Bank Americard.
So Bank of America continued to dropping these across California, where they, of course, had a large market share.
Here they were having a sale, and there I was without any cash.
And by October of 1959, following year, they actually had distributed over 2 million cards to the people in this region.
But I had my Bank Americard, so when the girl asked what I wanted, that, I said. And 2 of those. And charge it. Fine, she said.
And around 20,000 merchants began to accept the Bank Americard.
Boy, did I get a bargain. Thanks to my Bank Americard.
People on the receiving end of these unsolicited credit cards, some of them were delighted because they thought this was free money. They thought they could just spend money on buying whatever they wanted, and they would have to worry about paying it back much later. However, the problem with this was that those financially irresponsible individuals who thought this was indeed free money would be unable to repay the money that they spent on the credit card. So, Bank of America, in its other lending businesses, had a delinquency rate of about 4%. Delinquency is, of course, where you fail to pay back the loan that you borrowed. But in this instance, the Bank Americard had a 22% delinquency rate. And this was obviously highly problematic because if people can't pay back the money that they spent on the credit card, as a bank who's lending out the money, you're losing money. So across this operation, Bank of America, they lost over $8 million because of delinquencies, and they had further losses because of their marketing costs. So overall, they lost 20 million in total. Joseph William, who was the man behind this Bank Americard, got fired. What was even worse for Bank of America was that people with bad intentions and criminals and fraudsters realized that some of these cards that would be sent out to customers unsolicited didn't have the customer's name on it yet. So if they stole these cards, they would still be valid even though they weren't issued to a particular person. These criminals would steal these cards and spend the money. Because the customers of these credit cards were held liable even in cases of fraud, this generated massive uproar in both politicians and journalists because these fraudsters were running rampant with cards that hadn't been credited to customers yet, and the customers were being held responsible. Anyways, executives at Bank of America, after firing Joseph Williams, realized that this credit card idea had potential. They then tried to turn this Bank Americard program around, and by 1961, it had become profitable. And actually, what I found really interesting was that Bank of America hid the fact that these credit cards were profitable to inhibit competition, because of course, just a couple of years ago, they had tremendous media outrage about this program. However, until 1966, this was no longer possible because this program was simply too profitable. Now, at the time, there were certain regulations that stated you couldn't expand your card issuing outside of your state. So what Bank of America did was that they started licensing the Bank Americard to other banks to lend to customers outside of California, which was the state that they were based in. The other banks would handle lending money to customers as part of the credit system and the credit card. However, Bank of America would handle the transactions with the vendors. Dee Hock, which was a manager at another bank trying to issue Bank Americards, realized that this aggressive expansion was problematic because interbank transactions were going poorly. So he persuaded the executives at Bank of America to allow him to form an independent new alliance of Bank Americard issuing banks. And this was formed in 1970. However, outside of the United States, Bank of America continued to license Bank Americards and their processing infrastructure to other banks wanting to issue their own credit cards. So for example, in the UK, we had Barclaycard, which was based on the Bank Americard program. However, of course, it was branded by Barclays, and in other regions of the world, this was done similarly. In 1976, these international banks who were using the Bank Americard network decided to come together and decide on a branding that would be suitable for cards all around the world.
Why is Bank Americard becoming Visa?
So they eventually formed Visa and Visa International.
Did you know it's called Visa because Dee Hock thought that the term Visa sounded the same in every language and was instantly recognizable by quite a lot of the population.
I think what Dee Hock was successful at was creating a brand that is widely recognized around the world, which is testament to what he's done to create this global business.
They asked me what I thought we ought to do, and I said, well, I think a very small number of people ought to go away, isolate themselves from everything, and address one question. If anything in the world was possible, what would be an ideal organization to create the world's premier system for the exchange of value?
Visa, ever since it was formed, has had a significant market share. At the present moment, it has about a third of the global transaction volume on cards. And Visa's business is fundamentally about connecting banks, businesses, and financial institutions to create this payment processing infrastructure that works all around the world and creating rules and guidelines for credit card issuers, but also merchants, so that the customer experience of using a Visa card is as good as it can be. And in fact, at one point, it was the most valuable financial services company in the world, but at the moment, it's second just to JP Morgan Chase at over $500 billion in market capitalization. And what I thought was interesting was that Bank of America, which, if you remember, was the origins of Visa, has a market cap of about $300 billion. So Visa makes their money by taking essentially around 25 cents for every $100 transacted through its network. So this is not a huge amount, but if a business is expecting being paid $100, then Visa taking a bit is kind of annoying for them, I suppose. What's more is that if you use a credit card, they often incur very high swipe fees, up to 3%. Most of this goes to the bank because banks often issue credit cards with lots of perks, and this swipe fee is what the bank used to pay for these perks. And vendors, of course, get quite irritated because that's quite a large sum of money that's been taken away from them, and some vendors have suggested it's their second highest cost, even before rent and right after the cost for human labour. What's perhaps quite predictable is that antitrust regulators started taking an interest in Visa because it had become very dominant and had tremendous market power. MasterCard, which is a competitor to Visa, but also in some ways a partner in crime, also was subject to antitrust investigations.
America's consumers have simply lost out. They have lost the benefit of vigorous competition between the two largest credit card networks, which means that they have not enjoyed the innovation that competition brings.
Some of these antitrust investigations have gone on for a very long time, and actually one was settled just 4 months ago.
Visa is like, I guess, kind of akin to Walmart from last episode, where the initial focus was just to do something new and do something better and focus on the customers. But now it's transformed into this huge company that most people don't pay any attention to, and yet it's kind of a backbone to society, and they have so much power. Just like Oracle, for example. Almost no one's heard of Oracle, and yet they are absolutely huge and have so much control.
Yes, and some companies such as Visa prefer staying under the radar, but it has such tremendous impact on our everyday lives because when we buy something, we're essentially sending money to Visa. But Visa, having had this tremendous market power, is they're looking at other payment processing methods that could compete with their model of essentially swiping your card. Moving forward, I think Visa not only is mindful of competition from MasterCard and American Express. American Express, of course, lends money itself, which is unlike Visa because Visa doesn't lend money, it just handles the transactions. But also from fintech companies trying to bypass their network and offer more competitive solutions to businesses without Visa taking this 25-cent per $100 fee. In addition, regulators have demanded Visa to reduce the amount they take on payments that people make. And they have also demanded that the swipe fee, which includes the money that goes to the bank for allowing perks on credit cards, to be reduced. But overall, Visa has a tremendous potential because of their market power and because of the fact that the infrastructure can handle much more transactions without incurring a lot of additional cost. They have tremendously high profit margins and will continue to be very successful in the near future.
Bank AmeriCard, today's way to pay, presents
Yuletide presents, roasted pheasants, electric choo-choo trains,
Fur-lined mittens, fluffy kittens, sweet candy canes,
ski lessons, toboggans, bright lighting for the yard, cocktail glasses, airline passes with Bank AmeriCard. Quick healers, three-wheelers, vacations in the sun,
sledding,
skating, party making, having fun. Bank AmeriCard. Bank AmeriCard.
today's way to pay.
Thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed the story, please like and subscribe to our channel. Our full episode can be found in the description, where you can also sign up to our newsletter for a summary of what we discussed delivered straight to your inbox.